Okay, let's dive into one of the most common and, let's be honest, most frustrating human experiences there is: putting things off. I mean, if you've ever found yourself suddenly needing to alphabetize your spice rack when you were supposed to be finishing a big project, yeah, this is for you.
And if you do this, you are so not alone. According to research, a staggering 95% of adults admit to procrastinating. Just think about that for a second. That's pretty much everyone. So the real question isn't if we procrastinate, it's why the heck we do it.
We all know this feeling, right? That pit in your stomach, the guilt, the anxiety that just builds and builds while we avoid something. But what if the whole story we tell ourselves about why we do this, the one about us being lazy or undisciplined, what if that's just completely wrong? Right, so let's start by just tearing down the biggest myth of all, the story that most of us have on repeat in our heads. It's a story of self-blame, and frankly, it's time to unlearn it.
You know the drill. We immediately jump to framing this as some kind of deep character flaw. We beat ourselves up, we say we're lazy, we don't have enough willpower, our time management sucks, and we think the solution is just to, what, be tougher on ourselves? Well, that almost never works, and now we actually know why.
And this is where things get really interesting, because there's been this huge shift in understanding this. Modern research from psychologists and neuroscientists gives us a totally different and way more helpful explanation for why we put things off. Get this. Procrastination isn't a character flaw, it's an emotional regulation problem. It's not about avoiding the work itself. It's about avoiding the uncomfortable feelings that the work brings up. It's basically our brain's quick and dirty strategy to just get rid of a bad mood right now. So, who are the real culprits here? Well, when you're facing a task and you feel that pull to do literally anything else, it's because that task is triggering stuff like anxiety, self-doubt, or maybe just mind-numbing boredom. And your brain, trying to be helpful, just goes, "Whoa, this feels bad. Let's go watch a cat video instead." But here's the kicker with that little escape plan: it doesn't actually fix anything. In fact, instead of helping, it traps us in this vicious, self-perpetuating cycle of stress and guilt that just makes everything 100 times worse. And this cycle is so predictable. It all starts with a negative thought about the task. That thought creates discomfort. To get rid of that feeling, we look for a distraction, hello, Instagram feed, for some quick relief. But that good feeling is super temporary, and it's quickly replaced by panic and shame as the deadline gets closer, which, of course, just proves to our brain that the task was awful to begin with. So the huge irony here is that the act of avoiding the work is often way more painful than just doing the work. The problem isn't the task, it's that wall of resistance we feel right before we start. Okay, so how do we get out of this trap? Well, the solution is actually a powerful science-backed plan. And since we know procrastination is an emotion problem, not a productivity problem, the answer isn't another fancy time management app. It's about managing your mind and making it easier to start. So our first tool is something called the 2-minute rule. The idea here is simple. Make the very beginning of any task so ridiculously easy that you can't say no. It has to take 2 minutes or less. We're not talking about the whole task, just a tiny little gateway habit to get you started. For instance, let's say your goal is to run a marathon. That's a lot. It's overwhelming. But your 2-minute gateway habit? It's just putting on your running shoes. That's it. Anybody can do that. Write a book becomes write one sentence. Clean the whole house becomes put one dish away. And this strategy is so powerful because it completely flips what we think about motivation on its head. We think we have to wait for motivation to show up before we can act, but the science shows the exact opposite is true. Motivation doesn't come before action, it comes after. A tiny bit of action is all it takes to get the ball rolling. All right, our second tool is all about managing your mind. Remember that nasty procrastination cycle? It runs on fuel like shame and guilt. Well, research shows that the most effective way to break that cycle isn't to be tougher on yourself, it's to practice self-compassion. I know, it sounds counterintuitive, but it works. So here's a super simple routine to try. The next time you catch yourself putting something off, first, just forgive yourself. Seriously, say, okay, I'm procrastinating. It happens. Second, acknowledge the feeling you're avoiding. Name it. I'm feeling overwhelmed by this, or I'm scared I'm going to mess this up. And finally, just commit to starting for 5 minutes. That's it. This little mental shift can completely short-circuit that shame spiral and make it so much easier to begin. So the next time you feel that powerful urge to put something off, maybe instead of asking, "Oh, what's wrong with me?" The better question to ask is, what is this feeling trying to tell me right now? Because understanding that signal, well, that's the real first step to finally getting things done.